Hello, everyone. Welcome to this I didn't even balance the sound yet episode of Making the Rounds, featuring
Woo!
at League of
Let's
Emily.
go.
Nice. I'm balancing it as we talk. Okay, here we go. Today, obviously, there is no LCS and very little LPL, so we're basically forced to talk about LEC and LCK and what other random stuff that happened in the break. So basically, what we're going to go with this time, and wow, I really trolled this because I don't even have. There we are. There it is. Okay, good times. Basically, the big top story is we're going to talk about general topics or more broad topics, and we're going to go a bit further down and talk about gameplay in the second half. So we are going to start out with talking about Adam and LEC. Very exciting. There's first of all the controversy about the news of why he was benched even being leaked. And then what side you are on that. And second, like the timing of him being benched. So very curious to hear Emily Rand's take.
I mean, I think it is. I didn't realize there was a controversy over what the like whether someone should find it out or not, which apparently led to this like general discussion about the state of esports journalism that I completely missed. I have other opinions on the state of esports journalism that I was typing in your chat last night that aren't limited to esports. Esports is just a microcosm for stuff that's going on in regular journalism, right? Um, I was a bit surprised that it didn't come out immediately before the game even started, just because that is usually what happens, and I don't know if that like I guess the assumption that people were making, I don't know if this is true or false, but like the assumption people were making is that they were holding back until afterwards to like protect the players on the team.
Yeah.
Is that an accurate representation? Because I like missed
I
a
mean, I
lot of
don't
the
really know.
actual
Did they?
discourse
Yeah.
around like releasing the news.
I don't think they made it public, but I've also been in a time loop of sleep 4 hours, stream for 8 hours for the last like 48 hours. So hard to say, but I think the main thing that I was seeing right on this topic was, and from my perspective, because I've seen a lot of orgs just say, oh, by the way, we're benching this player for behavioral reasons, and have it be very vague because you don't want to talk about the specifics and you never want to talk about the specifics. So from that perspective, I've seen a lot of situations like that, and it's like one that comes to mind is TSM Academy with a player, and he's still in the scene as a coach, so I'm not going to say who, but TSM Academy said we are benching this player for behavioral reasons, and it was, and then they shared no additional information. It's like, all right, you guys just torpedoed that guy's career completely. So whatever he did, I hope it was worth torpedoing his entire career, right? And then so the next, I would assume with the Atom, it would be a very similar situation, because a lot of times when you have situations where a player is allegedly being an ass, you also kind of have to talk about specifics, talk about weird implications of the environment, and then all of these can of worms, and people start asking a lot of questions. So you basically have to keep it super vague. So as an org, you never want to make one of those statements, because if you make it very vague, the player's career is for sure over. And if you don't make it specific, and if you do make it specific, then a bunch of other questions come up that could implicate a bunch of other people. So for me, that's why it's very difficult to be specific on these types of topics.
I guess the question, do you know what it kind of reminded me of actually? Do you
Yeah.
remember the whole like Swift Doinby thing with they then flew
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Dade out? That's actually like what the initial timing reminded me of, because I feel like the timing in and of itself tells a story
Mm.
where something happened and the timeliness and like the timeliness versus importance of the game already tells you a lot of information anecdotally, that you can kind of read between the lines. It's that, like, something happened where this happened before such a major important match for them.
Hmm.
And the fact that the benching occurred at that time just says a lot. I think the whenever I think about, like, releasing information, it's kind of like, who is benefiting from this? Why do I want to release the information? Um, and is it important context? Uh, but yeah, the big thing that it really reminded me of was the Chaogu
Yeah.
punted semifinal. Obviously, that was a you could argue that was a much bigger game because of not only the region but the format changes that happened to LEC. But still, like, you qualify to MSI out of this tournament, and it was a really important match that Adam got benched before. And Adam is, I would say, a very crucial part of the way BDS have been successful as a team. Um, like, his champion choices, his lane matchups. I think a lot of their success has come from kind of trying to catch people off guard, or having him play things that opponents aren't used to playing against, that kind of thing. And if you always have to watch out for that, it affects the way you prep for this specific team. Whereas putting in another top laner, um, again, it just affects the way you prep for this team. But yeah, the whole thing is kind of weird because I don't know how long you want me to talk about it without talking about just, like, journalism
Journalism
as a
as a
whole,
whole.
which is
Yeah.
kind of fucked. That's not, like, shade to anyone in esports journalism. It's just journalism as a whole is, like, kind of fucked from top down, like, everywhere. So
Yeah, I think that's probably the more interesting element of it. And whether or not I agree on the prep aspect, obviously he does have a unique champ pool, so you're going to prep for someone with a different champ pool, which you could even argue because Adam's champ pool is very specific that it's harder to prep for someone without
mhm.
Adam's champ pool. And in a way, like Madcoy winning is more impressive because they had to play against the top laner with an actual champion. No, I'm kidding. But yes,
Also,
that's
Merwin
the
on the other side, who is another top
yeah, yeah,
laner,
yeah.
is very willing to lock in, like, kind of,
Yasuo
risky counter matchups,
sometimes.
let's just say.
Yeah. Um Yeah, I think that's probably definitely the side of the topic that is more interesting for us is like what is esports journalism and how is journalism functional? I know that there was
It's not.
this one exchange between Sheep Esports and I forget who it was. I think it was a coach who said, okay, so because Sheep Esports said we used to release information like this, but there was a backlash from fans, and it's like, well, uh, the coach's response was along the lines of, okay, so that determines whether or not you release information, right? Like whether or not the fans give backlash, not necessarily the effect on the personal lives of the people that you're releasing the
Yeah.
information about. So that's, I think, definitely the more relevant conversation to have is like, should the information be released by a journalist unless they're willing to, one, give very clear specifics, have these very clear specifics, and three, are these very clear specifics supposed to be should these very clear specifics be public, right? And
Yeah.
that's one that's very tricky, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know this comes up every off season, and this isn't behavioral, so it's, like, probably easier to talk about in terms of affecting players' careers. But there have been so many times where, and I guess they don't get a lot of backlash for it, but,
Mm-hmm.
like, I feel like there have been so many times where people have just leaked rumors
Mm.
indiscriminately, and it has adversely affected players' abilities to get on teams because teams will think that they have a verbal agreement with,
Yep.
and verbal agreements are, you can go into that whole can of worms, but like people think they have an agreement with another team when they don't,
Hmm.
or they'll think that they don't have an agreement with a team when they do, and just like all these things that can really affect the way that teams pick up players. And you can also criticize teams for sometimes listening to the community or other players and rumors rather than doing a little bit more due diligence
Yep.
or having scouting or stuff like that. So like at every level there's something kind of amiss. But like the worst case scenario for this actually is not anything recent, so I'll use it as my best example. When there was the massive Korean exodus in 2014, 2015, if you remember, there were so many LPL roster rumors. They may have all been true at
Yeah.
times, but then they snowballed into these ridiculous, ridiculous things where people were saying that players were contracted to teams what they were not contracted to. People were saying that Rookie and Cacao were being held hostage in someone's basement.
In a coal mine,
Um,
actually. There were
a
actual
coal mine. Okay, sure.
there were actually
But like,
photoshops of them in a coal mine at one
I
point.
do remember the photoshops.
Yes.
But like, so you get to the point where like it is just absolutely ridiculous, right? And then you ask, okay, well, why are people leaking this stuff on Twitter or on Weibo in China, to continue the 2014, 2015 offseason example? And the reason is just for a lot of times clout, not because they want to report the news or because they want to vet sources or anything like that. And like, sure, you can come at me for being like more of a stodgy traditional journalist. That is what I studied. Um, so obviously I'm old and I'm going to be having that opinion, but it really annoys me. This is just the latest iteration of it, but like whenever I get really, really pissed off about it, it actually usually is when it's roster rumors that I
Yep.
know affect the way that teams get players, and those players' lives are almost always affected poorly due to nothing they did. Like it's not performance based, it's not even behavioral rumor based. It's literally incorrect public leaks about teams they might be going to.
I think that's the other thing is that most of it is the fact that when you think of esports journalism now, you're basically just thinking of roster leaks. I think that's the other
Mhm.
thing that's very annoying because it feels like that's the only thing that consistently generates views, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, that was the most pained expression I've ever seen.
It actually makes me so sad because I know you remember this,
Yeah.
but like I can tell the story because I'm a fucking asshole. So we're in like Chicago at
Hmm.
2016 Worlds, and literally everything that got on top page of Reddit was like so and so tries deep dish pizza,
Yeah,
and I was
yeah,
just like, fuck this shit. And I like went and I read a bunch of like Pulitzer Prize winning articles, which obviously like again, you can like lol Pulitzer Prize all you want. I do too. But I was like, okay, I'm going to really, really focus on the craft of my writing in this next article. And it was the Faker
yeah,
interview that I
yeah.
got in Chicago. So yeah, like a lot of my or at least some of my pieces were formed out of like bitterness, because I really, and this is like very wanky, right, but like I really love the craft of writing. I think it's interesting. I write a lot, just don't post it anywhere. um so, which is, I guess, my issue. I could eat out some articles, I guess, if I wanted to.
Mhm.
But like I really, it makes me sad that that is not, and this isn't an indictment of the esports community. It's and not even an indictment of anything really. It's just like societally people don't really care about quality overall, like on the whole. It's, are you getting this information, and or like is this information going to be sensational enough that you that people pay attention to it and someone can make money off of it. And in most cases, it's not even the writer or the journalist that's making money off of it. So
Yeah.
that's another whole thing. And this is also social media makes it worse, but like this is not new either.
Yeah.
Like if you've studied journalism at all, like look up William Randolph Hearst. That guy made up an entire war essentially. So like,
Yeah. I mean,
um,
it's
there's a lot of like wild shit that is in journalism history. This is not new. It's just it makes me sad. I guess because initially we did have a lot of people who were really looking at like writing, especially like long form
Mhm.
features. And I noticed this while I was at ESPN as well. Like the long form features getting like fewer and far between. And a lot of people who used to write them are
Yep.
now doing like 50 billion podcasts at once instead. Um, so yeah, it just I'm old and it makes me sad because I like writing.
Yeah, we talked about this a bit on the stream last night. So I won't
Yep.
go into a ton of detail. Someone did ask in chat, what would you like to see journalism of in the esports scene other than roster rumors? I can let you answer that one first, but for me, the answer is like I'll let you answer that also, but I think for me, the answer is pretty simple. Like to me, roster rumors are, I won't say the lowest form of rumor journalism. They are basically like the most condensed, uh, like you just have to put in the tweet title. You don't people Most people won't even look at it, right? And then a lot of times this is like basically a lot of roster leakers. I'm not going to name names because there's just so many, but a lot of roster leakers will just trade information with orgs to kind of manipulate the outcome of the offseason, right? If there's a certain, like, I know a lot of GMs will do this intentionally. I know this might shock you. A lot of GMs will do this intentionally, but they will leak intentionally to leakers to get information out there to spur a decision by another team. So a lot of the information is basically just traded and peddled in that way because it is the information that orgs want people to know, right? But they don't want to be the ones putting it forward. Whereas a lot of journalism that is more, I would say, like more investigative, more thorough, requires a lot more fact checking, source looking, a lot of more detailed kind of investigation, and is very sensitive. Often is one not popular. Is often two is flat out denied by people with massive followings in the scene, and torn down. And then three often kind of like gets to issues that are like payment violations. There are so many stories about payment violations throughout esports history that were just never leaked, that some journalists would know about, for example, and would never come out because of agreements that journalists would have with orgs on roster leak information. So stuff like that is stuff that I really hate about the scene, and I'm not saying all roster leakers behave this way, but it is for me like why I have such an issue with the state of journalism currently. And that isn't even getting into all of the kind of journalism that you and I did, which was way more like long form content that had nothing to do with investigative journalism, but is also
Yeah.
technically journalism. So, yeah.
Yeah. That is another really interesting thing that I noticed when I got into esports, actually, just as an aside, is like when people thought of journalism, it was always news,
Mm-hmm.
like breaking news, not um, anything related to long form, like video essays or written features or analytical features, that kind of thing. It was never that. It was always like journalism is this and everything else is I don't know. There was no title for it, I guess, because they didn't consider like a lot of people just didn't consider feature writing or analytical content as like journalism in the same way. It's just like very bizarre to me. But
Yep.
that's semantics. The stuff I miss the most are long form features with like because these are difficult, right? So just like you pointed out how long form investigative
Yep.
pieces require like you have to corroborate things between multiple sources because inevitably someone in power will deny what you're saying. So you need to make sure that you are A, protecting the sources that you have, and B, making sure that there are multiple ones if you're going to be coming out with an investigation. But the things I miss the most are something you also should do for really good long form, well written feature writing, which is get multiple
Yeah.
perspectives on things. So instead of just interviewing one player, um, and a lot of this has to do with like admittedly has to do with access and time.
Yep.
Because a lot of times what the setup at for press at events is that you get to request like one or two players, um, and you interview them and you get a ton of information from them, but then you don't necessarily get anything else. Um, so the most interesting things to me are always a written feature or video essay feature where it is focused on a player or a event, and there are a bunch of multiple perspectives going into how did this event come to be, or like this is this player's life and we talk to his teammates from multiple teams and his family and his friends and all that stuff, right? um and there are features out there like that, but like the amount of time and money you need
Yep.
to do these things, especially if you're filming them, is massive, and the payoff, if it's not already a popular player, you're just not going to get views on it. Like there's some really good video features out there. Like I remember when we were both at Yahoo, Travis did one on Moon that
Yep.
was like really good, had multiple perspectives, it was great. And that got like no views
Yeah.
because no one and like the idea is that you are making people care about this player through um really quality storytelling and stuff like that. But I have seen some really high quality stuff
Yep.
out there, not just in esports, but again, just with multiple perspectives. It tells a really amazing story about a player or an event, and it just doesn't get views. So then whoever is above that person, or if they're independent, that person themselves has to make a choice because if you're doing it yourself and you're not fucking making money,
Yep.
you can't live.
Hmm.
And if you are working for someone else, they're just going to tell you, well, you can do that in your own time, but that's not what we
Yep.
are paying you to do.
Yeah, that's the big thing is just a lot of the stuff that I would do, right? That would generate the most views was legit just going to Weibo, getting translations of random Weibo posts, and
Ugh.
writing up an article in like 5 minutes. Whereas like the stuff that I enjoyed doing was the long form pieces, either storytelling, trying to copy you, or the like analytical pieces, right? So one of those things was like for me, those were always way more gratifying to write, and I've been a writer kind of like you probably all my life. So it was just natural for me to do written content. So that was definitely one of those things, and I still to this day like read a lot of things. I mean, everyone reads. We're constantly bombarded by social posts, but at the same time, just like sitting down and reading that kind of thing, getting a lot of perspectives. And even when we were doing it, we would basically do these interviews and we would have to write like a long form piece over the course of like a day. Right? That was all the time we would get. So we wouldn't have a ton of perspectives or anything like that, but there would still be the pressure to get it out. It, um, so I think that that's definitely one of those things where it's like being first is very important, more
Hmm.
important than accuracy. I think, objectively speaking, at this point, more important than accuracy.
Uh,
And
it's no, it's true, but it's sad. And
yeah,
again, like
yeah.
to reiterate, this is not just an esports thing. This is
Yep.
a everywhere.
And it is definitely a technology, an evolution of technology, and there's always good and bad things there, but
Hmm.
it is what it is. We have talked a lot about this topic, but I think the next
We said we
two,
weren't going to get into esports journalism, and we did get
yeah,
into
yeah,
esports.
the next two are, I think it's like there's very few people who did as much with League esports journalism exclusively as we did, I would say, because there are a lot of journalists who covered like multiple scenes.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's always something we're gonna gravitate towards. But I think on the next topics we don't have as much. I think
No.
the other two like kind of general topics that don't have much to do with gameplay is like the 100T X Pokemon collab, which people wanted us to talk about this for some reason. But I think the only controversial thing that I could think of about this was the $998 jacket, the Pikachu jacket for the 100 Thieves Club, and a lot of people were talking about whether this is something you can afford, like if it's worth the value, etc. So that's the only thing that I could think of as we're talking about there.
Uh, I mean, I don't know if you want me to get into a clothing like I could actually go
Oh,
really long
I'm
on
oh
this
let's
topic, but
go. Let's
no
go.
one cares. Um, so I think like 100 Thieves are insanely good at
Mhm.
using the kind of marketing style that started I mean, like, in terms of when I first noticed it and started getting into following it was with Supreme, but,
Mhm.
and I think that's the easiest example, I guess, um, where the idea is that it's limited availability, you're dropping in collection, you can't, get it anywhere else, and you can only get it for a limited amount of time, so, like, the exorbitantly high price is part of that, right?
Yeah.
Like the idea is that it's not just the garment that you are buying, but you are buying into the brand and this idea that like it is a limited access item that not other people are not going to have. So it's like a status. It basically turns into like a brand status symbol. Now is the Pika I did not know the Pikachu jacket was that much money. Uh if you're asking me the construction of the Pikachu jacket worth that much money, I would say the things that cost more that tend to be worth it for me are things that are made with actual natural fabrics that aren't plastic,
Mhm.
things that actually have things like linings, and are not like single seam and did no one cares. So if you're asking me like from a construction perspective, is this worth it? I would actually have to see the fucking jacket. But from a, like, marketing perspective, is it worth it? Yeah, I mean, 100 Thieves are probably making bank off this, and that's part of, like, one of the things that has made this like, as successful
Yeah.
as they have been in terms of, like, being in the public consciousness. So, like, cool. Like, are people buying the Pikachu jacket? And now I'm super
I
curious
don't
because
know.
that is,
I
like,
think there
it's
aren't any
expensive.
left, but I have no idea as far as I know. It's either taken off the market or sold out. I would guess that it's sold out, unironically. Which I find very strange because
Yeah.
I'm assuming if you're spending a lot of money on that, it's because you're thinking of it as a collector's item.
Mhm.
Um, which it's a very niche. Like, am I gonna be able to sell this in like 5 years at a premium type thing? And I think the answer is definitely no. Is this gonna be valuable in the future? The answer is probably no. Emily is very excitedly looking for the Pikachu jacket now.
Yeah, I
Uh,
am looking at this. I'm just like, wow, okay,
uh,
interesting.
but
I was going to see if I could see any like detail on it to see what the actual like fabrics are and like what the but I can't tell from these pictures. So, yeah. Looks like varsity jacket with some patches on it. And I'm actually not trying to undersell it. I'm just saying like this is when
I
you
mean,
talk about a garment like this, the idea is not necessarily the construction of it. It's the
yeah, I mean,
limited accessibility.
it's definitely like the limited accessibility. I was looking this up though because I was thinking because I do own some 100 Thieves drop items still. I think one of the most
Mhm,
iconic is like the geography hoodie, the one like the
mhm.
red and the black. And I have one of those, so I was looking up what is the going price of geography hoodie now, and it's actually like cheaper than what it was sold for. Like people are still selling it. So these are not necessarily items that go up in price.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one. But so it's definitely one of those, like, you're almost paying for the experience of acquiring a limited edition item on drop
Mhm.
day, like getting the experience of, oh, I made it in, like I'm one of the exclusive chosen ones who have received the 100 Thieves drop item, which is definitely a great marketing strategy, right? But I don't know if we're talking about like the cost versus the long term value. Apparently, someone in chat, or Ian in chat, Ito, who hopefully is doing well, is basically saying that he thinks some of the controversy came from Nade Shot talking about simplicity versus creativity. I don't know enough about that. I'm going to be real. So
I
I'm
have no
trying to find
idea.
like any social posts that he has about that. Um,
Yeah. I
someone,
mean, like, if
yeah,
you're
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, if you're asking me, like, am I susceptible to this? Just to, like, call myself out. This is a gift, but this is a like,
Mm-hmm.
people correctly pointed out this is a very expensive garment that I'm wearing, like, currently.
Yeah.
Um, so it's not as expensive as the Pikachu jacket, but it is expensive, and it's not within my price range. It was a gift from a family member for Christmas, like, I don't know, a bunch of years ago. I've had it for a while. But, like, yeah, like, I too am, I don't know, susceptible to this. I think clothing and fashion generally is, like, really cool. I also think the
Yeah.
if you wanna get into, like, the environmental impact, it's fucking terrible. Which is why I actually did mention, like, natural fabrics and that kinda stuff.
We are
But yeah,
going
like,
deep on LCS off
we
weekend.
are going deep. I mean, the fashion industry is awful. Should come as a surprise
We
to
are
no one.
attacking the fashion industry.
Anyway,
No.
I have no idea what the Nate Shot controversy is, so we should probably move on before we
Yeah, yeah.
bore the
I
fuck
I
out of people.
definitely don't know what that one is. We do have another question from Reaper's Arc related to this topic, which is, do you think that the old Challenger Silky jackets will increase in value over time?
Oh, sick.
uh
Buy yourself. Actually, honestly, that is a status symbol.
Emily's like, I'm copying one on eBay
I
right
kind of
now.
want one. Yeah, no. Those things are great. I'm sad they don't make them anymore. They
um
don't, right? I don't think so.
I don't think they do
That happened
anymore,
like
yeah.
yeah,
They
that
did
happened like
the helmet
forever
for
ago.
the CQ, which was fantastic. Um,
And we'll always have that gif of APA dancing in the Team Liquid parking lot with the helmet
I'm gonna
on.
see if anyone's trying to sell theirs online. I don't think they are, but
Wow.
people still keeping that shit close to the vest, as they should.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Maybe one day, if League is still going, if I bet now, if someone tried to sell it, like it would be worth something. But I
Yeah.
don't know. Hard to say.
I mean, I know a lot of the limited edition LPL stuff goes up in price because, like, I've been looking for. It's gonna look fucking terrible on me because, for people that don't know, I'm really short. But the giant LPL rain jacket from
Mm-hmm.
2018 that has the open panel in the back that either opens up to like bright yellow or bright red, and it says "All we fight for." Those have only gone up in price since I've been trying to coordinate with my friend Linda on finding one on Taobao. And it's a little the last time I looked, I'm pretty sure it was out of what I would be willing to spend to get it and ship it over, but yeah.
Yep. So I think that's one of those where it's like the timing has to be right. I think if you tried to sell one now and we're at the cusp of like where you'd have to explain what it is and the price being high. So I think if you want to sell your challenger stack it, if you're hard on money at the moment, maybe now is the time, because if you wait a
You
little
might be able
bit,
to make bank.
because if you wait a
Take
bit
it from
longer,
us.
you might have to explain to people what it is. It's, one of those, it's definitely one of those
God.
things, unfortunately. I'm gonna
Fashion and life advice with
fashion and
Emily and
investment
Kelsey.
advice. Neither
Yeah.
of us are licensed to do this. Anyway, continue.
No.
We do have some gameplay related. Uh, we do have some gameplay related questions, but we'll save those when we get to the gameplay sections. I think the last thing is that's more events based. More kind of like social topic is the FlyQuest Showmatch. Um, obviously, I was co-streaming this and I watched the whole thing. I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are because I saw you were tweeting about it too.
Um, it reminded me the
Mhm.
setup of it, and obviously this is on a significantly smaller scale
Yeah.
because everyone's playing from home. It's just kind of a fun show match. I think they set expectations for what it was going to be
Mhm.
correctly. But I also did think that it reminded me of, in a good way, of one of my favorite events in League of Legends ever, which was the 2014 Masters All-Star, OGN Masters All-Star
Oh, yeah.
All-Star series. It took place over, I think, the course of 2 or 3 days. It might have just been 2. Um, but basically, they did a bunch of fun show matches where you could see all chat, where obviously the casting was not as
Mhm.
serious. I remember, pretty sure it was Monty and Chobra for most of the matches that I saw, if I remember, and Chobra would translate a bunch of stuff from all chat because they would be like meme typing each other at each
Yeah.
other and all chat like kind of playfully being like, "Oh man, I got to leave because my mom is yelling at me," or whatever. And it was the not that we didn't see player personalities in OGN champions before that, because we definitely did. I think especially the come up of OGN was really good at showcasing individual player personalities, but these matches were so much fun. Like the way
Yeah.
that they made teams, where they had they had the Flower Five, which was 5 players that
Mm.
fans considered pretty, versus the Manly Five, which was like 5 players that people considered intimidating.
Sure,
And it
yeah.
was it was so fucking funny. Like the combinations of these teams. Anyway, the way that FlyQuest was doing this, obviously on a smaller scale and in a lot of cases with, I think, lesser known players, or not in a lot of cases, with lesser known players, for the most part in the league scene. I think it was a very fun kind of throwback to something like that, where you get agreement from all of these players that this is not going to be a serious thing, and manage to pull it off, because it was a fun time. Like, I wasn't able to watch every single match, but the ones I saw were very funny. Um, it sounded like Flowers and Cubby were having a really good time
Yeah.
casting it, which also adds to the you need to find people to cast that are just gonna have a fun time, especially when people are role swapping, and also be able to provide context as to why this is funny, or why we're showcasing this person's personality in this way. I don't know.
Mhm.
It was a that is what it reminded me the most of. So it was like a really fun time from what I watched.
Yeah, I think the obviously, like, I'm gonna enjoy some of the personality interactions more. So my favorite things are actually not the games themselves, but some of the things between, like when they did the captain's draft.
Mhm.
That was fun when they did the LS versus Blippo, like quizzing each other on their backstories. That was fun for
Yep.
me. I enjoyed those a bit more. Like I think my favorite moment, this is so stupid, but I think my favorite moment of the entire thing was when um Papa Smithy asks Blippo or asks LS what he thinks Blippo should play more of, and LS says Udyr. I don't know why to me that
God.
was just like for whatever reason. And he was like trying to go for like a niche pick or something unexplored. It's like, oh dear. It's like, yeah, yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
just slam
That's the
that
play.
thing. Keep slamming it.
Um so I those types of moments are really fun. Obviously for me, like Shaden versus Surdy TF, and then for some
Yeah, you can.
reason
There's
Surdy
so
has
much
to
love.
play Aatrox into that. I'm not gonna question the process. of Team LS's draft, but it was definitely that was funny to watch. And then of course like Surdy versus Blippo. If orcs and people were watching that, Surdy stonks.
Yep.
The classic get this boy into LCS is always fun to see. So um yeah, so that's pretty much the for fun stuff. I think we can get into some gameplay topics. The big one is obviously the fact that Madkoi made it all the way to finals. We talked a bit about the BDS situation, but I'm curious, what do you think, Emily? Does Madkoi making it all the way to finals make Europe a shit region? And this ties off. This connects to Harry the Man's question, which is the gap between East and West growing?
Um, well, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, the in terms of is the gap versus East versus West growing? I don't know if it's growing, but I think it's staying at a very large distance. In terms of does Mad winning, I think it's really interesting to me that this is a question when there was a series, and this is I will answer the question because my answer might vary with this back information. Um,
Mhm.
but I find it really interesting to me that when this happens in the LEC, I would say LCS, but it's not going
Yeah.
to happen in it's never happened in LCS outside of maybe like if you're looking at the current 100 Thieves roster, kind of. But like the LEC, whenever something like this happens, I feel like people are like, is the region shit?
Yeah.
Because a team of and obviously, one thing that should be pointed out is they're relying on pre-existing synergy from ERLs.
Yep.
Um, so that's another big reason why this team is working so well together. And one of the things that got them as far as they did is just literally synergy, like team synergy and coordination. Um, is this region shit if Mad can get this far? And one thing that's really interesting, just from like a perspective standpoint, is like 2019 spring LCK promotion. Tom won. Nugarty, Punch, Showmaker, Nuclear, and Hoyt qualify. Barrel and Canyon come in that spring. If anyone remembers Scrim Rumors from 2018 Worlds, which was held in
Yeah.
Korea, everyone's like, Canyon, fucking amazing. This guy is great. As soon as he's age eligible, he's going to be
Yeah.
insane. This Damwon team is insane. They come in, they end up doing really well, making worlds, etc. Uh, Griffin, 2018 summer promotion, Sword, Tarzan, Rather, Viper, Lehens. Obviously, Chovy came out into that roster later on, ended up becoming their starting mid laner as he ended up playing more matches towards the end of summer. And then their qualifiers, there's like a very specific Oriana game that people are pointing to when he gets this like insane shockwave at Baron. People are like, this team is going to be, blah, blah, blah. I find it interesting that whenever this happens in LCK specifically, because it did not as frequently happen when LSPL promoted into LPL.
Mhm.
And it doesn't necessarily happen in LPL now. It's more likely that you'll have a team like OMG last year
Yeah.
where they were kind of a surprise and then the players matriculate up
Yep.
into bigger orgs, which also was the LCK staple for a really long time. I'm just pointing out these two very specific examples of teams that were incredibly successful, one of which did go on to win Worlds in 2020, which is Tamwon. And I think the framing of is this rookie team doing well? Like this rookie team is doing well, ergo the region is shit, is kind of weird because I think people see it differently depending on region. So I just wanted to point that out. But um, in terms of is it quote unquote bad for the LEC? Um, I think that the LEC in terms of gameplay has some really interesting uh teams at the top and then the best Western team currently in G2.
Mhm.
From a gameplay
Yep.
perspective, in my opinion. And then the bottom of the league is not great. And also comparatively, because I've seen a lot of
Mhm.
people, and we talked about this last week, doing the like LCS is top down better than LEC. I think LCS has been more interesting because a lot of the bottom teams, thinking of Rogue more than anything else, honestly, just don't do anything. Um, so it's like not only
Yeah.
are they not good, but it's a boring watch, which is unlucky. But like I don't think it's as bad as people say, not
Mhm.
because like Mad's macro is insane or anything. Like I don't think it is. I do think that their greatest strength is like the coordination of the team. Um, but I also don't think it's a bad thing for this to be happening, especially in winter. Like in terms of this Mad Koi team, in my perspective, they're one of the most fun teams to watch right now in LEC. Um, and I think in terms of their development, it's weird because on the one hand, I'm like, they're ahead of schedule because
Yeah.
I didn't expect them to be this good in relation to other teams in LEC, but on the flip side, they're also again relying on pre-existing synergy. So um, that's something to keep in mind when you look at them going further in spring and summer, because barring insane roster changes, you could have teams like insane roster changes on other teams in LEC, by the way, not Mad Koi. You could have other teams leveling up, figuring out more things as they iterate on their rosters too and the next thing. So it's like it's really interesting, but no, I don't think like it's weird to hear how dire people suddenly think the LEC is because Mad Koi are doing well.
More specifically,
Like that's very weird to me.
because they lost money betting against them. I said it anyway.
Is that it?
I think that's it.
Is that the reason people are so mad? I
That's a big
actually
part
don't
of it.
know.
I think that's a big part of it
Oh,
based on the tweets and the
okay.
takes that I see, and a lot of the the a lot of the pundits are sponsored by betting sites, right? So, and it's definitely like Forrest is one of the very vocal people on the Mad Koi hate train. I will say, but I
Oh,
think
I like do not pay attention to any of this. Wow, I'm so
I
out
mean
of the
the best
loop.
part of watching LEC is the social media takes. I will say, but that's that's
My trying to avoid social media
yeah, you're
is
missing
paying
out.
off.
You're missing out.
Or I'm missing out, yeah.
One of those. If it makes you a better analyst, then arguably it's paying off. But also arguably it pays to it pays more in terms of like following and fame and getting people to want you on their talk shows by saying mad choir trash and having a literal meltdown when they win. Sorry.
No idea where this is happening.
Sorry.
I have
Anyway.
no idea who you're talking about.
um
Oh god.
but
I'm gonna close this tab of the Pikachu jacket.
the Pikachu jacket.
It was just
Making a
staring at me
comeback.
from beyond
Um
the
but
Discord call.
the I think the for me, I will actually go ahead and make a take here. I think the existence of Mad Koi actually makes Europe stronger and more competitive than it's been in a couple years. And this isn't necessarily because of like specifically pointing out, oh, this team with a lot of synergy came in and made the region stronger. I think it's just seeing like more strategies develop in Europe and a lot more focus on macro, because when you have a team like this with pre-existing synergy, you will necessarily have a lot more focus on how do we play together as a unit, how do we play the map, and also G2 has a lot of pre-existing synergy. How do we play as a unit? How do we play the map? A lot of these teams actually kept like core um, elements from last year, like a lot of the top teams did. And then you end up with a situation where your top four is actually expanding on and becoming like more ingrained in terms of how they're playing the map together, what macro fundamentals they're focusing on, and being able to get into the details because they know each other so well already, and they've gotten over the oh, how do we think about Herald swap timer? Oh, how do we think about getting vision? Oh, how many people do we need to be on the wave when we're getting mid prio? Like they've gotten over that, right? That's the stuff that you have to spend
Mhm.
months on every time you have a new team. So you're able to see, and I think the top four LEC teams, they all do at least one thing better macro wise than LCK or LPL teams. And I will say this: like, there's at least one thing that all the teams do better. It doesn't necessarily make them the better teams than quote unquote Eastern teams, whatever. But there's definitely like at least one thing that they all do better than a lot of the other teams. And I will say, like, for G2, if you want to learn how to side lane, in 2024 on the new map, watch G2 games. They're absolutely exceptional at this. Like, I watched JDG versus LGD last night, and arguably JDG, they should have this on lock, right? They're a core that have stuck together for ages. They have Yagao back, right? Yagao is their old friend and compatriot. I have never seen more name ramming in my life. I was actually just losing it. I unbenched the XX macro mug. Come on, guys. Like, it's too. Whereas you watch LEC and it's like almost a palate cleanser, just if you care about good map play. So, arguably, I would say that like the inclusion of teams like McCoy have made LEC stronger this year. Um, and I think McCoy do a lot of fun things and have developed a lot of. Sorry, someone in chat said I didn't know XX joined JDG this year. Anyway, the
I didn't either until last night.
apparently not. Um, the a lot of the things that Mad do well are like they're playing kite back comps very well. When they do their
Mm.
trigger pull is very exceptional. They actually do push out like side waves all the way to stop like counter plays. If you watch them play, so I think their macro is actually pretty decent. And then of course their coordination around jungle and lanes is something that I think is like what they're arguably best at. Um, and then there's a lot of elements to these. I think Fnatic have a lot of really good setups where they're doing like dual lane collapses. I think BDS are very good at finding timings to be in river first, and they have like very good tailored strategies generally against the teams that they face. So like all of these teams, they do something very, very well from a macro standpoint. So it's absolutely absurd to me to go on Twitter and say, "Oh, LEC is more shit than they've ever been." So that is my take on it. Yeah.
I also think it is really interesting whenever, and this isn't necessarily true of, like, I think it's always weird when um rookies come in, they perform really well, and I think sometimes the response that this is a bad thing can come from the fact that known quantities are either underperforming or like really good staple players of the region are no longer on top teams, or they're not performing as well as they have in past years, that kind of thing. Um, which I think you can see on some of the periphery LEC teams, where players who used to be kind of like LEC staples uh, are not performing as well. You can particularly see it in LCS as well with, I think, one of the weirdly, the perceptions of why the region is better than expected is because the known quantities are currently underperforming in C9 and
Mhm.
NRG to some extent, although NRG was always you could argue they were kind of always
You
like
could
this
argue
last
this
year as
is
well.
on par for
But
energy.
yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. So like I don't know if NRG is the best case example, but C9 certainly is, I think, and that's kind of contributing to people's opinion of the LCS right now in terms of like parity.
yeah. Um Speaking of, I think someone asked in chat last night for us to talk about our dark horse teams.
Mhm.
In basically any region. So teams that we think will do better in like the second half or can make a run in playoffs, things like this. So do you wanna take LCK? Because I know you'll
Yeah,
probably have a
I
better
was thinking,
idea.
I don't know if you saw the depression because I was gonna say, oh, I wish it was Damwon, but it's not.
Yeah.
Um, they're not doing so great right now. I
They're
think
okay.
of all teams, yeah. I mean, are they? Um, are you talking like dark horse to win the region? Because like I think
I mean,
no one is gonna beat T1 except for in right like in season Gen G apparently. But in terms of so like people are if we're taking out
I
T1 and
guess
Gen G
we can
and
interpret
you're like,
this as making a run or however you want to interpret it, just like dark horse in general.
yeah. I think the team to look at right now in the LCK that's super interesting is probably Kwangdong, a team that not a ton of people expected to do super well, and also um, not a team that necessarily has like star power behind it. Outside of, I guess, the most well known, if you don't follow LCK Challenger, is probably Cuz,
Mm-hmm.
um, who got a lot of criticism. I think a lot of it was undeserved, in my opinion, from his performances last year. Uh, but yeah, they're a team that didn't necessarily get off to the best start in week 1 because they ended up facing T1 and Hanwha, and they lost both those matches, but they beat KT in week 2. I think they have a bunch of really interesting young players, particularly Bulldog, who was performing really well individually last year, in my opinion, already. Um, but then they added Bull in the bot lane. They've just been, I guess, and again, this is my bias, as you and I have both talked about, like, what kind of teams do we like? We like teams with a bunch of like upstart rookies for the most part, and then there are a bunch of really interesting young players on this team
Mm-hmm.
who you could theoretically see like come into their own as this team continues to improve as a unit. Um, Obviously the danger is that like a roster like maybe KT or HLE are going to really get their shit together and start looking good.
Yep.
Um, but in terms of what team is like a cool dark horse right now in LCK, I would definitely point out Kwangdong. I think they're really fun. Uh, I really like the players that they've ended up promoting and acquiring from Challenger, and either in their sophomore year or their rookie start. And it's, I don't know, they're a fun team to watch. And I don't expect them to win LCK, but I think they could make I think they could make playoffs interesting if they keep up their kind of like growing improvement.
Yeah, I could see it. Um, LPL is hard because I feel like
IG, no, I'm
yeah,
just kidding.
like that's one that stands out, right? That's like the obvious answer. You can see like I think Cryan and On have been performing unexpectedly well. I think like the IG BLG series will not be interesting, really, but you know we could pretend it would be maybe. Um, a lot of the teams that you would think of as like dark horse candidates or even like second or third place candidates are not performing exceptionally well. I think TS is maybe a team you can look at, which is a little silly, but they're definitely not a dark horse. I think like I will shout out. Who will I shout out? And teams that I've enjoyed watching. I think we could do dark horse to make playoffs. I think dark horse to make playoffs is a fun one. I think that you could see UP climb and make playoffs, big top 10. There you
Ooh,
go. There's my dark horse case. Take Ultra Prime, because I think that
the return of Hacker.
they're at least coordinated. They are very bad. Don't get me wrong, but I've watched a lot of bad LPL teams recently, and it's like because of the matches, the past 2 days have been like that, and it's like I think Ultra Prime could maybe make playoffs compared to some of these teams, and they obviously had some terrible matches to start the season, but I think there's a shot for them. So there's my dark horse take for LPL. If you want to go for maybe a deeper run, let's see. Like you probably have to look at IG.
Yeah.
Um, I think maybe the land jungle change will change them up because I don't necessarily think Tianjin was performing exceptionally poorly, but it's definitely something that I'm curious to see if this shakes out the standings at all. So yeah, we'll go with IG. The dark horse top 10.
I think it's
Woo!
gonna be, yeah. As we say that tonight, they're probably gonna get blasted by
Yeah.
PLG just
I mean, for
to
sure. Just to caveat, we fully expect that to
yeah.
happen. I think
But
maybe
against WE,
the only teams that I expect to reliably win right now are like TES and BLG. Honestly, I'm gonna be real. The all right for LEC, because they're gonna enter their second round and rosters will be huge shakeups. So it's very difficult to say at this point. For LEC, but if you have a take, I'm down.
don't off the top of my head who I'm trying to think because what roster moves do we know of?
So based
It's
on
just
the
Finn,
leakers,
right?
so the only ones like confirmed by the social account is Finn, um, over Sagenda, which I don't necessarily think changes a whole lot. The other one that is allegedly rumored is Kaiser being traded out for Trimby on Heretics. And then the other one that I'm aware that like it's allegedly Juhan will join Giant X's academy team, but I don't know if that
Oh,
will
I
affect
did
anything.
see that. Yeah.
Um, so those are the two. I think the those are the main ones that I've heard so far. I don't know if that changes anything for any of the teams we mentioned, but I think LEC has a very weird format that's very bad for, I guess, like teams improving over time. Because you basically have 3 weeks to get your shit together, or you're just done. And it's like, do you take that time to spend a lot of time scrimming? Do you take that time to, like, what's the choice, right? And a lot of teams usually will just make an emergency change, right, rather than spend that time scrimming or doing anything like that. Because it's like, oh, why can't you get your shit together in 3 weeks? It's like I don't know. It's a really deep question. So I think that's one there. In terms of teams that I might expect or could see get it together. Hmm. Now they're not making any changes to K Corp. I think if K Corp continue to play around top, there's maybe an angle, right, for them to do better in second
Mhm.
round, but who knows? And then I think the other one is like I actually expect SK to keep improving to an extent just because they weren't bad, and I think that they can do better in the second half because they're not at the point where it's like, oh, they perform so terrible that we have to implode and redo everything. So maybe SK.
I was gonna say SK or like I guess it's it's weird to say Fnatic, because obviously, like,
Yeah, they're not
this
necessarily.
this roster, like, already was
Yeah,
together, like, they were expected to do well, and it was kind of the mad coy, like, comparative upset, but, like, I think Oscar has a better performance, and this team is a threat. It's hard to, again, because G2 are definitively at the top, it's hard to see anyone. It's kind of similar to looking at
yeah,
LCK, where I'm like, well, I don't really see any of these other teams beating T1 or Genji in a best of five. It's kind of similar where it's hard for me to see any of these teams beating G2 in a best of five. Um, I don't know. I think this Fnatic team does some interesting stuff if they can kind of shore up topside. This Oscar looked rough in some of these games.
yeah. All right. So what about LCS? I think there's a team in fourth that could make a run, possibly. I don't know. It's hard to say.
um, yeah, I mean, we talked about this last week, I think,
Yeah, yeah.
in terms of like who does the break benefit,
Mhm.
and I think it helps C9 and NRG respectively. Um, I think it's weird. LCS is so weird right now, really, because of the C9 underperformance. I think it's hard to judge teams. FlyQuest is definitely the team to beat. I think the break is, again, we talked about this last week. The break is probably going to be
Yeah.
the worst 400 Thieves because
Mhm.
I think in that time, NRG and C9 will be able to shore up a lot of their problems and come back and start making expected runs on the in the final 2 weeks. Um, as we return, C9 have an interesting schedule with Fly and TL. Um, you could look at TL if you wanted to see. I guess if you can get APA on stuff he's comfortable with.
I'm a big
Uh,
TL doubter, but they're obviously improving, so
yeah,
I want to say because my dark horses were like for the split going on 100 days in Shopify, I clearly was pretty good on one and
yeah.
completely obliterated on the other. At this point, I think Shopify's drafting is very like I don't know. It is very like we play the red side draft on the blue side, which just tells me that they're still trying to figure out what works for them. Unfortunately, uh, I think Dignitas have looked okay. Like I think XU has performed way better than I expected of him.
Yeah.
And then Dove has also performed way better than I expected of him. So if I had to pick like a super dark horse team, it would be Dig. But otherwise, I think we'll see like C9 energy shoot back up, and over time, maybe not right away, and then like IMT Shopify probably stay at the bottom. So yeah,
I think the I think the standings kind of readjust to what we expected after the break, but we'll see.
I think I have enough faith in 100 that they'll stay relatively high though. I think that one will stay up there. So yeah, not
Yeah.
maybe
It
second,
also
but I think they can shoot for like top three or top four.
you have more faith in them than I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say they play really well around the players like they have really good game plans and drafts for the players they have, so
Yeah,
it's a good it's a good understanding of who they are.
we do have someone specifically ask Gills asked, "What do you think is wrong with Z9?" We've talked about this on previous episodes, but I think ultimately it comes down to like lack of synergy and poor understanding of how they want to play together, and the break should be really good for them. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. All
We
right.
did that breakdown last week, right?
Yeah, we did.
Or was it the week before?
No, it was the week before because last week we didn't talk about C9 really. We
Oh
just talked
yeah.
about the break
Rip
and how
C9.
it will impact them.
It'll benefit them, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we have some very. So we have. I'm going to attempt something for the last two topics that may cause a lot of technical hilarity. So please stand by. Um, the first topic.
I'm gonna go on stream now because
Yeah. It's hard
yeah.
to see because I'm not sharing with you like what's happening. But for the next one, I want to talk about good grub usage because this has been a big topic for us. Is like, what should you do with grubs? Are grubs good? How do we secure grubs? How do grubs work? So I actually just want to play a clip from one of the KT games because I feel like what has actually helped KT a lot after the New Year break is how they're thinking about grubs and playing the map with grubs. And I don't know if Emily agrees or not. It's like doing this kind of breakdown for a KT fan is very intimidating because you expect them to attack at any moment. But
Our team is praised for anything. I
so
expect I know what game it is though.
it's
If I'm thinking
the
about Genji game 2.
yeah, you probably know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That was really a
but
really nice run of play if it's the one I'm
yeah,
thinking of.
so you'll probably see it on a slight delay if you're watching the stream, but um, I am gonna go ahead and play it now. So basically in the sequence, I'm playing it on 2x speed. I'm starting it here because I think Barrel's recall or not Barrel Def's recall is very key because obviously Def is
Yeah.
playing the fasting Senna here. He goes mid that helps the mid secure prio. This is like an old Rift Herald swap tech, right? And then we guarantee that we get at least 5 of the grubs, the void grubs here. And then basically we instantly are pushing as much attention and as many numbers as we can onto top. I think doing this with Nautilus makes a lot of sense because you have like the Nautilus E for wave clear. You can basically, if anyone tries to dive you under tower, and they're deliberately, I think, trading Dragon for this because there is so much Dragon focus in the league. They know that most teams will do this. So they do this, and then they kind of fix the waves here. Def swaps back. He's refreshing his wards. He knows that they're up tempo because Genji took the dragon. Like they see the dragon signal, so Genji kind of have to back here. And then on this window, like I also think it's I mean bonus pays flash anyway. Then we like on this window, Perfect is also getting this because they know that they're so up on the game here, right? Like Genji have to react to top side. They just took dragon, and they're doing the same thing on bot side. So they actually take these with like the enhanced turret armor like so fast. And I was like, okay, if you can play like this, right? If you understand the map well enough and you're doing well enough that you can snowball like this, then you can definitely prioritize grubs like really highly. So I really enjoyed this sequence from them. And it was like really nice because you see them focusing, like KT in particular, focusing a lot more on grubs in general after the break. But this was probably the best sequence that they have had for this.
For this too, it was really interesting because if I remember correctly, for the first 2 grubs that Pioshik took, he essentially was topside, took those 2 grubs, and didn't full clear the grubs
Yep.
because Genji had started first Drake. And they actually were able to collapse to the point where it was no longer safe for Genji to take that Drake. So they backed off. So not only did he have the 2 grubs, he did the 2 grubs, left one up, was able to respawn bot side, and off of I pretty sure if I remember correctly, off the waves, KT are actually able to get in and get that first Drake as well, which is also really key to this later part of the setup because you also mind a lot less giving up second Drake if you already got the first one. Because yes, it stops your own Drake stacking, but also it's not like you're overloading topside to get grubs while Genji have control over bot side, right?
Yeah, they were like I think that's one thing that we've seen I think has been like very strong is the way the teams are using swaps. And swaps are always important to execute, but it's like people are executing swaps around grub timing and use of grubs a lot more. Whereas like the herald swaps, I think are less effective because when you are swapping for herald, a lot of times it's post plates and you're giving the turret to the ADC, right? So, seeing like people use the fast push and the plates having like less armor, plus just the grubs being very obnoxious, is I think where we're seeing like how we're seeing swaps evolve, and it's very fun. I think G2 had really great swaps in their series as well. I'm thinking about game two where they actually swapped to bail out their top laner, which to me makes sense for G2 because almost no team will swap to bail out the top laner. They sacrifice their top laner's lead to bail out their bot lane. But G2 really love functioning off of like the side lane pressure, so they did this, and then they also like ended up taking turrets and having like just huge tempo advantages by having correct timing in their swaps. So those were very good. So yeah, that's like for me the the coolest thing, one of the coolest things that I saw this week. So I just kind of wanted to share that since I think we can do like more fun stuff, and hopefully we can set up something where Emily does virtual cam if she wants to share like clips
Yeah.
for future episodes too. So
Jungle pathing, get ready for it.
So
Everybody booed now.
everyone loves jungle pathing. What are you talking about? So we are going kind of long, but I do have a fun game, Emily. It is
Yeah, I have no idea what
this
is.
This is a surprise topic. I have not explained to her what this is beforehand, and this could be a disaster depending on like my technical capabilities here. But
It doesn't instill me
but
with confidence.
this was inspired by her tweet about Flangles. Okay. Emily made a tweet where she was talking about how every time people talk about flank angles, she mentally says, "Don't say it," you know, Flangles. So we're gonna play a game called Rate That Flangle. Okay.
Oh god. What is one of them Flandra's like Aatrox one from last night where he just gets fucking blown up in the jungle?
No spoilers allowed. I am going to show a sequence.
That's the most memorable one, I'm just saying.
A sequence of Flangles, and Emily has to rate them. Out of whatever score, whatever you want. Like if you want to make it out of 10, if you want to make it out of like Flandra to Caps, I don't know, whatever you want. It's up to you.
Hi Chow.
Flandra to Hi Chow. Hi Chow is peak. Emily has to rate the Flangles. So I'm gonna
let's go. I have a pen and paper.
This might be slightly delayed because she's watching off of the Twitch stream, but all right, here is the first one.
Okay, let's see this. Oh, this is the G2 one, yeah.
Oh.
Here he comes. I forgot how slow this was, actually.
Yeah.
And here comes wow.
Pog.
How many Flangles are in this? It's like
so many.
2 in a row, right?
Yeah, 2
favorite. Or 3 in a row.
My personal favorite is the Frescowy Oriana Flangle, but
yeah, that is the peak, especially since like everyone is dying so slowly and you just see him and it's like very
he's just walking.
Very telegraphed. Yeah, he's just like, okay, I'm here. That was a good one.
Yeah. So what's the score there?
I will say for entertainment, am I doing this out of 5? Like
whatever whatever score you want, yeah. Hi Chow is 5.
Hi Chow is like peak, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know what one is yet. Okay. Yeah. I'd say this is like a medium or like a 2 in terms of like surprise, you know? Like you see him coming. You know he's coming, it's just inevitable.
So we're breaking down the scores like figure skating, like you've got and surprise.
Oh god. He has like a PES.
Yeah.
He got a negative GOE on the execution, but the style and audacity to walk in, I'd say that's pretty average. I'd give it like a 2.5.
All right. Okay, so here we go. Here's the gonna mute this one and we're gonna turn on this next Flangle here. Sorry, I took this from my stream last night, so you unfortunately have to see my webcam.
Ooh, this is the series I haven't seen yet.
Both of these mids are just very annoying in terms of wave control. Oh, Hung? Nice.
Oh. Hung, what are we cooking?
Nice jump over the wall. Does he die for this? No, Iwandi with the save. Let's go.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that was good.
We like the Flangle.
Good job, Hung. Yeah, I like that one. It's like pretty basic, but well executed. That is like like the high if people understand figure skating at all. It's like it's not even the degree of difficulty is high, but like in terms of execution, really good. In terms of entertainment value, boring, more boring.
I mean, for me, it was enjoyable because I was not paying attention to what he was doing. Like when he was walking around, I was just watching the siege and being like, "What is going on?" And then he's just like comes out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
I was as surprised as EDG there. It was like, "Oh, there's a rel." So I enjoyed that one personally.
I'll give it like because it was just a really good execution, right?
Yeah.
Like he did see the angle. I'm gonna give it like a 3.5.
Yeah, now you can watch the series, the game, and see what happened after that, which might lower your score, unfortunately. But
unlucky.
For now, we give it a 3.5. All right, all right.
I mean, I'm a hung enjoyer.
Yeah, I do know that about you. So
he's not developed it like I would have hoped, but
all right. So this is another one from last night.
I already know.
Nice fight from
Let's go.
Angle, as we will. He's dead though. Wow, Senna is just go leading over the HP bars
too. Oh god, it is not good.
All right.
Oh god. So in terms of entertainment value, off the charts. In terms of actual execution, terrible. The entertainment value bumps it up to like a 1.5, but that was not good.
Okay,
and I was highly entertained by it, both now rewatching it and in the moment when it happened.
I actually thought it might be good when I saw it, but everyone immediately just knew he was there.
It's like no, and the fact that he then like hop over the wall because the Talia wall comes down like literally right in front of him.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. All right, yeah. So this next Flangle you probably also recognize. Let's see, but I think this might be the winner. All right.
Oh, yep. Here we go. No.
Once again, multiple Flangles in this one.
Yep. It is great because I already knew to watch BB, right? Because I have already seen this. So like Caps is a genius.
Caps is indeed
it's the very like, what is it? Mickey, unironically, by the way, I know Mickey was inting, but also he did create a lot of space with Matt just overextending to kill him.
Sometimes
I would say
for like the KDA doesn't matter, the win matters more, you know? What are you gonna
Yeah,
say?
exactly. Caps started it. The BB flank was actually really nice though. I think he had a really, really great series in the finals.
Yeah, BB was really good in the finals, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So for BB, for Caps, it's like you give him credit for the setup. I feel like if it'd been a little bit more coordinated, it would look better. He might not have just gone in and got blown up, but it worked out. BB, I would say BB is like really good, like a 4. It's hard to get a 5, you know, it has to be like insane.
Okay.
I would say BB is like a 4, and then like Caps is like a 2.
Oh wow,
it works, right? He's the setup,
so it works out. Yeah. All right, we're giving the all right. So it sounds like BB was the winner, though.
BB is the winner.
You might be
as he should be
doing Caps dirty because that was an exceptional bait. You know, everyone just collapses.
It was.
Like,
It's like
the global
in
taunt.
yeah, in the KT series where the setup for Baron was just Beryl like
Yeah.
almost dying.
I am gonna make another NACL reference here, but I appreciated that Quad in the Fly series as Hui, he built Seraphs and he built Banshees, and then he just like walked forward to tank every single gold guard. That was fantastic.
He's a bro.
that's that's a legend right there. I think the yeah. So there we go. There's the Flangle segment. So
I'll come out if we do this again. I'll come up with an actual better like scoring chart
nice,
that's like
nice.
figure skating, where it's like part of it is like performance and part of it is like grade of execution
Yeah.
on the technical flank.
How deep can we go? You know,
Yeah, we can probably go pretty deep.
on the Flangle topic. Yeah, we'll see if we bring it back. If I see some good Flangles this week, we might also get more variety in Flangles since I'm not just coming up with it like last minute. So, all
We
right.
also have all of LPL and
Mhm.
LCK this week
Yep.
too, so
Uh,
we're
s-
back.
yeah, absolutely. No LCS.
No LCS or LEC. So
Yeah,
next week you guys are gonna have to deal with us
just
just
talking
talking about
about
LPL, LCK.
yeah, it'll be fun. So I do. So we didn't have a lukewarm take last week, so we do need to do one of those, and then we'll probably either end the show depending on timing, or we might have one more topic for fun. So
What my lukewarm take is. I don't have one.
pew, pew,
Usually,
pew.
like,
You have a very lukewarm take.
yeah,
What
I don't have any lukewarm takes.
I already gave my spicy take, which is that I think LEC is like some of the best league in the world
Yeah.
right now.
I mean, I guess my lukewarmest take, which is like almost a cold take, honestly, is just that,
Perfect.
yeah, yes, LCS is entertaining, but one of the reasons why there's so much parity is because the expected top teams are like not doing so well. And like that is in and of itself interesting, but
Mm-hmm.
also it's what's contributing to like this perception of, oh, anyone can be anyone, et cetera, et cetera. I think like when you actually examine that, the fact that C9 and like to some extent NRG, to other extents not necessarily NRG, because again they were always like this. Like you'd hear rumors of them not doing well in scrims, and they would lose to like bottom tier teams in single games. So it's not necessarily new for them, but in terms of like what we thought would be our two top teams right off the bat, neither of them are doing particularly well in the standings comparatively. So um I would just say to people it's a small sample size, and I also expect that the standings by the end of the season will more accurately reflect like what people expected.
Yes, but all right.
It's a very cold take.
Are you then
Yeah.
calling the LCS shit?
Mm, I mean,
Oh,
am I?
am I?
Not really.
Contractually, she cannot. Anyway,
Yeah, I know, right? Like I'm on the LCS broadcast. I mean, it's entertaining. I
yeah.
think it's hard because, like, in terms of if I'm looking at LCS right now versus LEC, if I'm just looking at like the two Western
Hmm.
regions, um, I don't see a internationally viable team. And by viable, I mean like quarterfinals, like actually getting to bracket stage of an international tournament, possibly upsetting if that is possible depending on matchup. I can see that of G2, but I can't see it of any of the LCS teams right now.
Okay. Well, we'll
Tough.
allow that to be the
We'll workshop it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's like approach considering the current LEC climate. That might be a spicy take, so we'll take it. Um, all right. I think the all right. So before we go, we had someone in chat last night who really wants to know what is your most anticipated game of 2024.
That's super easy if you know me. But it is coming out at the end of this month, and it's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So the next part of the remake chapter, I'm very curious to see what they do with this because the first part was way better than I was anticipating. Um, I had low expectations, I guess, because
Yeah.
you know, usually remakes are just kind of whatever. And also, Final Fantasy VII in and of itself is like just it came out at like a very bizarre, like
Yeah.
foundational time of game development. So like it's all over the place in terms of mini games and cutscene style, and it still has the blocky like
The Nintendo
you
graphics,
know
because it was supposed to
yeah,
be on
like the
Nintendo.
toaster
Yeah.
hands.
And they changed the last minute to PlayStation. Yeah, good times.
Yeah, because like you can see the difference between that and 8, which comes out
Within in a
a
year.
few yeah,
Yeah.
and it looks like way better.
Yeah.
So yeah, it came out at a weird like foundational time, not only for me as a person because I was a child, but also for like gaming in general. So I was not expecting a lot from remake, and I really liked the first installment. I enjoyed playing it a lot, so I'm really looking forward to that at the end of the month. And the other one was because I'm just a JRPG stan, I guess. Persona 3 Reload, which I
Yeah.
hadn't played. I hadn't played Persona 3 until now. And I will say the lead in to this entire thing, which was off mic, was me and Kelsey talking about how no one has attention spans anymore. Um,
Yeah.
because I was really surprised at how slow the intro to Persona 3 is. Because this is a game that like a lot of people really love, and I am now seeing why people really love it. But also, I was really surprised that people were willing to give it so much time to just kind of do its thing because it doesn't introduce there's no like immediate conflict up front that
Mhm.
you're given, right? So like in 4 it establishes like we're solving murder mysteries as our little Scooby Doo group in this like sleepy town. In 5 it starts with the protagonist being falsely accused of something by someone who is like higher up in power. So like the person who was actually in the wrong just has more money and influence. So he essentially buries this kid. Like that's where you start.
Yep.
There's no like big flashpoint for Persona 3, and it's very slow through like the first month and a half ish of like the in universe time. So I'm like I like it. This isn't me shitting on the game. I'm just surprised that people had the attention span to like be able to wait it out until it gets more interesting and the actual larger narrative starts to come into focus.
So it would have made sense if I could find this, but it's very difficult to find my Steam wishlist for some reason. Because I probably have some anticipated games that I'm following, but I cannot currently think of one. So I'm just gonna do the cop out answer because we're both Final Fantasy nerds, and Final Fantasy 16 is allegedly releasing for PC this year, so I'll finally get to play.
I can't wait to get your takes on that game.
Oh my gosh, making the round spin-off Final Fantasy podcast. When
Yeah, no,
that's the real question.
I have a
Uh,
lot of takes on it. I was
yeah,
talking
yeah,
to Raz about it, and he is it's weird because he was like, it was shit, and then he gave it a higher rating than I did. And I was like, okay.
yeah. There's a lack of nuance there. I have a lot of really strange Final Fantasy takes for sure. Um, so that's the I remember there was like a quote tweet where it's like Final Fantasy 13 is actually the best Final Fantasy release post Final Fantasy 9. Final Fantasy 8 might actually be the best PS1 title to play, and then there was like a couple other ones like I don't know. I have a bunch of stupid ones that most people would be like, "What the fuck are you smoking?" So it's a good time. The but yeah, that is for another time. Anyway, thanks so much everyone for watching Making the Rounds. Glad we are consistently getting more live chat engagement now.
Yeah,
Like keep the questions coming. Oh yeah, I said FF2 is a top 5 title as well. Which is definitely a take.
that is a
Um
hot take. Yeah.
so the So yeah, I think keep the questions coming. If you have questions in YouTube, I think it also helps if I say when this is recorded live. This is recorded live
Mhm.
on Mondays, typically after LEC, but since there won't be LEC for a bit, we'll probably just do noon Mondays until it comes back. And
Mhm.
then uh, everyone, thanks so much. Also, shout out to Hopefully Cynical who gave us a sub during the stream. So,
Yeah,
if
thank you.
you sub during the stream, I will give $1 to Emily Rand because that's basically all the money I get for your sub. So, thanks everyone, and looking forward to seeing you all next week.